Welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network and a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and my pronouns are she, her.
My name is Dave Riedel. I write about movies for some places. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and my pronouns are he, him.
And my name is Evan Crean. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s movie guide to better living. And my pronouns are he, him.
That is true.
Yes.
I was going to say, yeah, you are, but I was like, that doesn't work. Yeah.
It doesn't quite work the same way. Yeah, I know.
Work.
Yeah, next time do the pronouns first.
Ooh,
and then,
yes.
and then do what you do.
So that we can
because
say.
Then we can
okay.
say, yeah.
Yeah, you are. We like continuity here.
Yeah.
So this week, like every week, we're going to be talking about some movies. We're going to be talking about Together, The Banishing, Concrete Cowboy, and a few films that we saw from the Wicked Queer Boston LGBTQ plus film festival. So that's actually what we're going to kick things off with, Wicked Queer. And I just want to say I'm really excited that we're covering this fest because I've wanted to cover it for a while. And so, yeah, so I'm just happy that we're doing it. So Evan, I know you saw something that you were really excited about. So why don't you tell us what you saw?
Yeah, so I saw a rom-com, an Israeli rom-com. It has a couple of different titles. At the festival, it's called Kiss Me Kosher, but on IMDb, it's called Kiss Me Before It Blows Up. It is written and directed by Sherelle Peleg. And yeah, it's a rom-com about two sets of star-crossed lovers.
Oh.
The main couple is an Israeli woman and a German woman. And Shira and Maria are their names. And so the story is that Maria, who's German, is moving to Tel Aviv to live with Shira. And when Maria gets there, she accidentally drops her bag and a ring falls out. And Shira thinks that Maria's proposing to her. And so Maria's too embarrassed not to say that it was a mistake. So they get engaged, even though they've been together for 3 months and are just moving in together. And so that's like one kind of storyline is Shira and Maria, and the fact that Shira is very liberal, but like her family is very like conservative. And when I say conservative, I mean in Israeli politics. Like they live in a settlement, and her dad is actually played by John Carroll Lynch, which is really funny.
Oh, he's great.
The only Hebrew he speaks in the film is when they do like a Shabbat prayer. And the rest is entirely in English, which I think is funny. But yeah, he is great, and I enjoyed seeing him in this movie. And so like she comes from a like traditional family in that like they have no problem with her being lesbian, like absolutely zero. But like they have things that they want. Like they want to throw a big Israeli wedding. And so when Shira and Maria are kind of like, I don't know if you want to do that. They're like, come on, you got to do that. You got to have a big wedding. You got to have like Jewish kids. Like these are the things that they're upset about. So it's really refreshing in that way that it's like, it's not about their sexual orientation being an issue. It's more about the fact that it's like, you have an Israeli woman, she's marrying a German woman. And so there's just awkwardness about that. Like there's a lot of jokes about like whether her parent or family members were Nazis or not. And so there's a lot of humor in that. And then Maria's parents are like very liberal Germans too. Like there's culture clash. So this is a movie all about like culture clash, and a lot of the humor comes from that. And it's very funny. And I think it really represents the issues of like intercultural relationships. And so that part is enjoyable. But the other storyline is actually about Shira's grandmother, who is like her best friend, and she's a Holocaust survivor, and she has a relationship with a Palestinian man that she's been like best friends with like forever and ever. And so like he has really wanted to date her, but she's like, no, it's not appropriate or this or that. And so it's like about him and her like deciding to actually be official and be a couple. So we have these like two relationships going on, and all the humor comes from that of like cross-cultural relationships and trying to make those work. So yeah, I enjoyed this movie. It's very funny. Like I said, I think it captures the like dilemmas of cross-cultural relationships and trying to like navigate tough questions, but it does so in a very funny way. And I just really enjoyed this movie. I had a lot of fun.
Nice. Glad you enjoyed it so much. It's always exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw 3 films at the fest, and I'm going to share what they are. I saw See You Then, which is written and directed by Mary Walker. And it's a drama, and it's about a trans woman and her ex. And they meet up after having not seen each other for almost 15 years. And this is the first time that her ex has seen her since her transition. So there's some adjustment on her part, the ex's part. She asks some questions about her transition. She asks her questions about her life. They ask each other questions about their life because the protagonist, the trans woman, her ex, is now married and has kids. And over the course of the evening, they discuss gender and male privilege and dating and motherhood. And the film it's really good, and it's very, very poignant throughout. And there's something kind of sad about seeing this couple kind of reunited, because it's very clear there's something that happened in their past that broke them apart. But the film kind of takes a disturbing turn by the end as the 2 women kind of unleash their like venomous pain on each other after one of them confronts the other about their past and why, because the woman who's the trans woman, she left, and she kind of left unexpectedly, and that caused a lot of pain. And so, so some of their insults and things they bring up are kind of transphobic on one end, from one of them, the cis woman, and then there's abortion shaming from the trans woman. So it's kind of just like really difficult to watch. And the ending is kind of unsettling, but until it gets to that point, it's really good and raises some really interesting issues. And we don't have and Mari Walker is I'm pretty sure is a trans woman herself. We don't see enough trans film. We don't see enough trans characters on screen played by trans people, because the lead role is played by a trans woman. And so even though I had some discomfort by the end, and some things that I don't think quite work in the film, I think overall it's a really interesting story, and one not told often enough. The second film I saw was Bloodthirsty, which is a Canadian werewolf horror film directed by Amelia Moses. Yeah. And it features a queer woman protagonist. And the protagonist is a singer, and she and her girlfriend go to a producer's mansion, and they stay there so the singer can work on her new album. And she's a vegan. Yay. I love that, because I'm a queer vegan too. And she has dreams, and it starts right off from the beginning of the film. The film opens this way. She has dreams about eating the raw flesh of animals, kind of sort of reminiscent of Raw, Julia Ducournau's amazing film. And
do you like that movie?
Oh my God, I love that movie so much. And then the producer encourages the singer to be, less inhibited and to really like push herself and to work really hard. But he's also really controlling and alienating, and his controlling nature disturbs the singer's girlfriend. And she's like, we got to get the fuck out of here. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm staying. I need to finish my album. And so that causes a lot of tension and strife between them. And so seeing kind of the emotional and then physical transformation into a lycanthrope is interesting, to say the least. But yeah, so there's that. And then the third film I saw, which is my favorite, is Nina Wu, which is a really great, visually striking and evocative psychological thriller from Taiwan. And it features a queer woman protagonist, and she's an actress who's kind of going through both emotional and physical gauntlet in order to get a role. She and quite a few other women are like lined up, and they have to wear certain outfits, and they have to the casting director like makes them, bark like a dog and do kind of demeaning things. And it's really, it just escalates and gets like worse and worse and worse. And it's a really riveting and fascinating examination of misogyny and rape culture in the entertainment industry. It's a great lead performance. It's just, the cinematography is really stunning. This is just such a great film. I loved this. And this was directed by, Midi, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. But yeah, great film. So yeah, those are the three that I saw at Wicked Queer. The narrative features are not, and the documentaries are not being shown right now. The film fest for those ended already, but you can still see the short films. Those are going until the end of April. So definitely check it out.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I was glad I checked out a film from the fest. I've, like you, Megan, I've been wanting to see some movies from the festival, so I'm glad I got one in just under the wire on the last day of the fest.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely some great films there. All right. Well, let's talk about The Banishing. So
Can we banish this fucking movie?
How long were you waiting to say that?
I actually just popped into my head the first time. Yeah.
Nice. So The Banishing is a British horror film, and it's directed by Christopher Smith. It stars Jessica Brown Findlay and John Heffernan, and it is set in 1930s. And a woman, her daughter, and her husband, who's a vicar, all move into this mansion, and it's a haunted house film. As they're in the house, they hear voices and people disappear, and she sees the protagonist. She sees doubles. She'll see herself. She'll watch herself seeing somebody like die in her arms, like that kind of thing. Her daughter will disappear from hallways. So
vivid hallucinations and lost time from the different characters. And there's like a push and pull between the wife and the husband. Like she really wants to have a physical, intimate relationship, and he seems to be holding back on that. So that's like a little bit of push and pull that's going on between them.
Yeah, he's gross. But
well, he's got that whole "there's no sex for pleasure" thing, which is part of
which fits into the house and the house's backstory, because there were these creepy fucking monks that lived there before who were like self-flagellating, and I don't mean that facetiously. I mean they were really like hurting themselves and other people.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this movie is shit and doesn't make any sense. And some of it looks good. Let's see. I liked the mirror stuff.
Yeah, the mirror stuff was great.
But, and I just sort of appreciate it. I don't know the name of the occultist. The Harry Reid, is that the actor's name? I can't remember. The guy with the shocking red hair. That's the color of red that looks like it's Sean Harris. The color of red looks like it's like a dye job or a coloring job, but that's his real hair, just styled very strangely.
He's a creep in the. He was in. He was a Mission Impossible villain in Rogue Nation.
Yes,
he was.
Yes, and he seems well. I guess you could say that John Lynch has some fucking scenery chewing scenes as the strangely quiet but extremely malevolent. Is he a bishop? I can't remember what they call
Bishop
him.
Malachi.
He is, yeah. But those two guys are kind of fun. Poor Jessica Brown Findlay.
Brown
Findlay. What a crummy role she's stuck in, and she's trying so hard to do something with it.
Why do you think it's a crummy role? I'm not disagreeing. I'm just curious why you think that.
Well, just everything just sort of happens. It's not. Let me see if I can put this in a way that makes sense. She's sort of a proactive character until she's not proactive anymore. You know what I mean? She's like, everything she does is just like
happening to her.
It's happening to her, but because the script demands it of her, not because it's something her character would do, because her character actually seems like she's relatively progressive for the time.
And she's speaking out.
Outspoken. Yeah. But then she's just kind of like, I told my husband I'd come out here, whatever.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I really like that about her, that she talks about how she's uncomfortable being in a lavish home when so many people are struggling because of the war. She's, vocally anti-fascist and talks about the need to speak out. So yeah, that's really great. And I like Jessica Brown Findlay. I think she's really good. But there was something that kind of bothered me about this role, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And I think you're articulating what some of my issues were, because I think she's really good. But and her material is good up until when it's not. And you're right, because it's convenient for the script.
Yeah. And I just want it noted that someone said I was articulate. Okay, Evan, go ahead.
I was going to say that, Dave, you actually brought up another thing that we talked about a little bit off mic. And I think you kind of hinted at one of the problems of the movie for me is that it feels like it's going along and checking standard boxes for like a haunted house movie, not because they're compelling, but because you feel like you just need to do them. Like the story follows, like for me, a cadence where you just feel like, okay, I'm doing this because that's the next thing I have to do in the haunted house movie. And now I'm like we're in the thick of the origin story of why this place is haunted. And now we're like in the thick of the confronting whatever this malevolent force is and trying to right the wrong so that it goes away. It just felt like it was checking all these boxes that you get in these like standard haunted house movies, but it just had zero enthusiasm for the telling of the story or the reasons why things were happening. That's for me, this movie felt like a series of individually interesting horror scenes. Like I thought there were some inventive things that they did in the moment, but aside from that, it didn't really come together in any kind of cohesive way for me. It never hung together in any way that was compelling or moved the plot forward. I felt like it was just like on autopilot. It was very like one note kind of movie for me.
Yeah. And let's not forget about the part where the vicar husband, when he is possessed, kills someone, but then at the end of the movie, he's just preaching like nothing happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, you remember how I got possessed and then killed the deaf housekeeper? Well, who fucking cares? I'm the vicar. And also, there are Nazis in this movie for no reason I can understand.
For no reason.
I mean, other than that there was like, practiced occultism in the Third Reich, but Megan, you sound like you have a reason.
Yeah,
makes sense to you.
I don't think it's for no reason. I mean, I get why, if you guys think that, and obviously too, I get why you think that because it kind of pops up and it feels like an addendum, kind of like a coda. But I think it makes sense because she's talking about the rise of fascism and she's talking about its insidiousness and how it needs to be stopped. So for me, it kind of made sense. Like, okay, they're into the occult, like you just said, this is the evil that's, continuing on. It's not going to stop, but this is why we need to speak up against it. To me, it almost kind of had, even though this is set in the 30s, it has kind of a current relevancy to it because, of course, as we know, Nazis are still fucking around and haven't gone away. So for me, it kind of had a thread that made sense, even though it felt sort of tacked on. I kind of bought it and was into it.
I mean, I buy that John Lynch, Bishop Malachi, would be a Nazi just because he was an evil fuck.
Exactly.
But like the whole thing where he's like, Hans or whatever the fucking guy's name is at the end. I love how it's like Stuttgart, Germany. Like, really? The big fucking Nazi castle and you're going to tell me it's in Germany? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that part at the end to me where he dug up the skulls and then brought them to the Nazis, I was like, Megan, I get what you're saying in terms of like the rise of fascism, and I think that would have been appropriate, but like to throw that like bit on the end there where he's like bringing the skulls, because then it seems to be like looping back around to this idea of like, oh, well, there's some type of like supernatural paranormal connection to the Nazis that we're just not going to get to see because this is like the last scene of the movie. It just, to me, that felt unnecessary. Like I see bringing them into parts of the middle of the movie and like using that comparison, but at the end it just felt tacked on and unnecessary and mostly just confusing. Like, what do you want me to do with this information? Okay, the bishop is a Nazi. He brought these skulls to the Nazis. I don't give a shit what they're doing with them because we know they're going to lose the war. So what the fuck?
Yeah, to me, it kind of is no different than any other horror film where you see the killer survive or there's some kind of like wink. They didn't kill them or they didn't stop the ghost or what have you. So to me it was kind of like, oh yeah, it is tacked on. It definitely is, but it didn't bother me per se. But I completely get why it did bother you guys. I just want to say that because Dave, you had said that the film looks good. That's what I actually really enjoyed about the film. I love the art direction. I think it was stunning. I think the cinematography is really good. The lighting is great. And I like the usage of the space. I wish it had used it more for greater impact, but I do like what we see.
Yeah, from a technical standpoint, this is actually a pretty solid movie.
Yeah.
From a thematic screenwriting standpoint, it's dog shit. So, It's a give and take, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's something really interesting going on about the whole shaming of what is Jessica Brown Finley's character's name? I don't even know. I feel bad. Does anybody?
I don't remember either.
Okay. Well,
that's what kind of effect it had on me, I guess.
There we go. But yeah, so her character,
Marianne.
Thank you, Evan. So Marianne, she has her daughter, and she has her daughter out of wedlock. And there's this whole, throughout the film, they're talking about how there's all this shame about it, and how terrible she is. And Malachi says that to her husband, like, oh, it was so great that you took her in, after all that shame, blah 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 blah, all of that. And and then she tells kind of a, just by the end of the film, she tells this disturbing story to Malachi, because he's like, oh, I met you before, don't you remember? And he's like, and you did a confession, and you're Protestant to a Catholic priest, and that's awful. And she's like, well, no, I didn't actually give it a confession. And, they lied to me and told me that, my baby was dead and they were going to have to extract it. And, but that's not what happened. And, she says how she doesn't feel shame. And so that's all great, and we see her on the slab, with the creepy monks and all of that. But I would have liked more explanation. I mean, not explanation, but exploration of this theme about trying to control women's bodies and how horrible that is, and anti-choice themes and things like that. Like, kind of digging into the repro justice themes. I wish it had done that better and more fully, because there's something there that's incredibly potent and powerful and important to explore and discuss. But yeah, it kind of, I'm like, oh, yay. And then it kind of falls short.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it just makes it about like the conventional terror of like, oh God, these monks tortured people, and now I'm on the torture slab.
Yeah.
Instead of like really digging into more about the themes of what's going on there, which I think to your point, would have been a much more interesting movie.
Yeah. Although there are touches of that, in the sense of how her husband is so creepy and controlling and telling her where she can and can't go. And she's like, you're going to tell me where I can't go? Like, no. And he's like, you're not with your artist friends anymore. I'm like, what the fuck is that all about? And so clearly, they're having this dichotomy that between them, they're having this divide as far as how they see things, how they view the world. She doesn't think she should be controlled. She shouldn't be, so it's touching on it, but it almost feels like it's trying to touch on too many things, like religion and the problems with religion and repro justice and, feminism and control and fascism, but it's not really delving into anything super deeply. Like, it's touching on them, which is great, but yeah. But having said all that, I think I like this more than you guys, because I thought it was okay. I agree though that the writing should be a lot better. And the ending falls apart.
Yeah.
Yeah. But some individually inventive things. Like, I love the scene where she was trapped on the wall and could see multiple versions of herself trapped to the wall. I thought that was really there was cool stuff. It had some cool ideas, playing with mirrors and hallucinations and keyholes and things. I was all about that stuff. I just wished it linked back up to the story in a way that made any kind of sense.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of like kitchen sink action going on in this movie. It's just like, let's take this other haunted house thing and throw it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I almost wonder if it would have worked better if you, and I know this is weird because the film kind of hinges on this, but if you took out the kind of religiosity of the film and just focused more on the haunted house themes, I almost think that would have been a much better film.
Yeah, agreed.
And I wish that somebody had been Scottish so that when they said the word vicar, it could be vicar. But oh well, you can't win them all.
Oh well, indeed.
Or any of them in The Banishing, for that matter. If Charlotte Copley had been one of the actors who was able to say vicar.
This may be a silly question, but what was the actual banishing? Like, who was banished?
Good question.
Oh, see, and I thought that was like a silly, like I missed something that I was like not paying attention. So, okay, good. Glad I'm not alone.
Maybe it's about the spirits trying to banish them from the house so they may steal the daughter.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, that's an interesting thing that we didn't talk about the woman whose child was taken, so she wants to take Marianne's daughter. Yeah.
Yeah, see, there's so much happening in this movie, none of which fits together, that you kind of forget the main part, which is that there's this ghost who's like, you fucking killed my daughter, so I'm taking the one that's in here now.
Well, that's also really disturbing too, because Marianne's daughter keeps telling her, you're not my mother, because, she didn't live with her for a while, and then she gets custody of her again, and she's like, no, I am your mother. And she's like, you're not my mother. And so you think like maybe it's related to that, but nope, it's related to the ghost. So, yeah. But yeah. Do we have any final thoughts before we move on to our next film?
I guess the only thing I'll say is I thought it was creepy how immediately, the moment they move in, the daughter's just like playing with the dolls she finds, and it's just like
the monk dolls.
There's the monk dolls, and they're just like fucking evil. And evil doll movies, I'm kind of like, nah, whatever. But those, for some reason, really worked for me.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, those were definitely creepy. I think the whole movie works on a creepy level. Like, it is very eerie, very creepy, very like you said. So yeah, but the dolls definitely worked.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about Concrete Cowboy. So,
like a concrete cowboy.
I love it. Always love a musical interlude. So this is a Western drama. It's directed and co-written by Ricky Staub. Stars Idris Elba, Caleb McLaughlin, Lorraine Toussaint. Oh, love Lorraine Toussaint. And Jarrell Jerome. And a teen from Detroit, played by Caleb McLaughlin. He keeps getting in trouble at school. He gets expelled, and his mother's fed up. So she's like, I'm going to send you to live with your father over the summer in Philadelphia. And he hasn't seen his father, and he's mad about it. And his father trains horses, and it's based on the Fletcher street riders who ride horses in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm. They're real people, which is cool.
Yep. And a couple of actors are real people, which you hear during the credits, which is awesome. So yeah. So what did you guys think of this film?
I dug it.
It was all right. It's better than all right. There you go.
Okay. Do either of you care to elaborate?
Evan, you please.
I don't know. I thought this was a really interesting story. I think it was a little predictable in some ways in terms of like telling the like coming of age story, especially for like, someone who's like kind of stuck, inner city, friends with somebody who's dealing drugs and is clearly on a bad path versus like the people who are off doing the other thing, who have something better going on, more productive. I think it kind of follows some predictable beats that way, but I really like the performances in this film. I liked Method Man in this.
Yeah, he's good. Yeah.
I liked him as the guy who became the sheriff, and he's kind of straddling both worlds of like being a cop and like working for the city, but also still friends with all the people from the old neighborhood. I liked Idris Elba when he was in scenes where he was acting. There's a couple scenes where he has with his son in the film where I feel like he's really gives a good performance. Like the scene when Cole basically rightfully kind of screams at his dad for like being a father to everyone else and not being there for him because like his house is a fucking mess. There's beer in the fridge and sliced cheese and like no other food. He has to sleep on a couch next to like a horse in the living room. It's just like
it's so absurd.
Understandable that he gets in his dad's face about this because like, what the hell? And so I think that scene is really compelling in the way that he kind of changes the dynamic by talking to Cole about how he named him after John Coltrane and talking about his past and why he has not been a part of his son's life. And I think that scene was really effective. And there's a scene later on that I'm blanking on that he also had like a similar kind of like emotional tilt. And I thought that was like well done. So I liked his performance. I liked all the people in this movie. I thought this was like a really great cast. And I thought it was awesome that these were real people. There were people who actually do this and were part of the movie, and I feel like that lended an authenticity to it where there were just people that just felt natural, like supporting characters in the movie, like Paris. I thought that he just felt like completely natural in this world. Isha, is that her name? Isha, the
young woman.
Yeah, and I dug that aspect of it. So even though it was like a little bit predictable in some ways, I dug this. I like a coming of age story. And so I think this looks good. It has a really nice Western vibe to it. it actually made me want to see like a black Western. I think that would be really awesome. I'd like to see that movie. Like full on Western, like period Western, because this is a Western, but like I would love to see like period Western. I think that would be really cool.
I think I got one for you.
Yeah.
Mary Van Peebles made a Western.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's called Posse.
Yep, he did.
In the late 80s or early 90s. I think he made it after he made the one with Ice-T and Jed Nelson. What's that one called?
New Jack City.
That's the one, yes.
Yeah, there's also
I remember New Jack City.
There's also the remake of The Magnificent Seven, which is nowhere near as good as the original, but it does have Denzel Washington in a Western.
Right.
Yeah. I'd like to see full tilt Western. I'm going to put this out there. Shauna and I were saying we'd like to see Jordan Peele do a Western, but also a horror Western.
Ooh, listen, I love a horror Western.
I'd see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's not enough. There are not enough horror Westerns.
Anyway, those are some scatterbrained thoughts about this movie, which I liked.
Which were not so scatterbrained, but
Yeah.
They felt
I have a question about horror Westerns. Megan, you may know the answer. Actually, Evan, you may know the answer. Does Bone Tomahawk count as a horror Western?
I would say
Kurt Russell?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely has horror elements if you don't want to say it's a full-on horror, but yeah.
Yeah. And it has some of the most fucking violent killings I've ever seen, but that's another movie.
Yeah, I'd have to rewatch it though. It's been a long time.
How did you feel about Concrete Cowboy, Megan?
I liked it. I like a horse movie. I mean, I like animal movies in general, but I particularly like a horse movie. I like that many films have working with horses, that it makes you a more compassionate person. It makes you a more disciplined person. Caring about another creature brings the best out in you. This kind of strangely, even though it's not a Black coming of age story, but it kind of reminded me on kind of a macro level of The Mustang, which I absolutely adore that film. Like I said when I introed this film, I love Lorraine Toussaint. I cannot get enough of her. She is outstanding in every single thing she is in, whether it's Middle of Nowhere, whether it's this film, whether she's voicing, She-Ra. She's not voicing She-Ra, but I can't think of I can't think of her name. I'm spacing out. Anyway,
Shadow Weaver.
Thank you, Shadow Weaver. She's always outstanding and a phenomenal actress, and I love Idris Elba too. But it is funny hearing you talk, Evan, about how he's acting, because there's definitely some scenery chewing scenes. But at the same time, what's great about Idris Elba is even when he is doing that, I always find that there's a chord of truth and vulnerability into what he's doing on screen. So that scene where Cole is yelling at him and calling him out, I love that scene. I think it's such a great one. And usually a scene like that, I feel like in a lesser film, I'd be kind of like, oh, okay, we're, hitting the story beats, we're supposed to have an emotional moment here. But it felt really authentic, and I felt really moved by it. So I really enjoyed it. I like some of the cinematography, the golden glow, kind of, the magic hour shots where they're working with the horses. There's a stunning frame of a sunset where someone's silhouetted on horseback. That's absolutely incredible. But some of the other, especially when the film opens, there's a lot of shadows, and it seems like it's not really lit well. And I couldn't tell if that was a conscientious choice or if it was a choice because it was difficult to shoot indoors, or because some cinematographers have a hard time lighting Black people's skin, which shouldn't be a thing, but I have read over and over again is definitely a complaint by Black actors and filmmakers. So I don't know what that was about, but most of the cinematography was gorgeous. And I really liked that. I also really liked the scene where Lorraine Toussaint's character Nessie talks about the notion of breaking horses. And it's always been such a violent imagery to me, and one I've never liked. But she says that Black people have always known that horses aren't meant to be dominated, they're meant to be free. And that whole conversation about Black people being erased from history is really, really fascinating and a really great scene, because again, it's giving a message, it's telling a message, but it's doing it in a very organic, conversational way that just feels very fluid to the film, which I really enjoyed. And I will say that I also like, as hokey as it may be, the quote, "Home ain't a place, it's a fam." You know, Smush says that. He says it earlier in the film.
Very
and then
Fast and Furious of them.
It is very Fast and Furious. Yeah, and Idris Elba says it at the end. And yeah, I was like, oh, sniff, sniff.
Yeah. And I like how they reference Fast and the Furious when talking about like their horse fair or whatever it is that they're having. And then it turns out to be exactly that. Like people are racing, and I think it's a really exciting scene. I love the race scene. The action, I think, is shot in this quite well. I liked the scene where they're all kind of galloping to the cemetery, and the kids on the bus see them go by.
Yes.
The chase scene was very intense, where Method Man was chasing Cole and Smush. I thought that was like, oof, that was tense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the one thing I will say, just on a side note, is, which is probably going to be weird since I do like horse movies, is it always weirds me out when people ride horseback. It's something I don't enjoy, but it is shot very well, and it's done very well in this. So Dave, you've been awfully quiet. I want to hear your thoughts on this.
I just don't want to talk about horses, but I know it's kind of a strange thing to say when it's a movie about riding horses and what horses can do for you. I think, when I see movies like this, kind of knowing horses the way I do now, what I spend most of my time focusing on is how much they get right about horses.
Mm-hmm.
A lot right in this movie. And what I appreciate also is whoever their stunt riders were or whatever, those people could ride.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of times you see movies, especially now when, it's much more unusual to see people on horses. Like, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, there were actors who, hundreds of actors who knew how to ride a horse because they made so many Westerns.
Yes.
Yep. And that doesn't happen so much anymore. So they either trained the actors really well, or like you said, there were some real Fletcher Street riders in this, or they had great stunt people. So, but one thing that I noticed is, I can't remember his name, the rider who was in the wheelchair.
Paris.
Yes. When he's teaching the kid how to clean a stable, the kid still doesn't clean that stable very well. I mean,
I like the horse manure. I like the manure POV shot when he's wheeling.
Oh my god,
that ramp. Was something I never thought I would see before, and because it's gross. I mean, horse manure. If you're going to talk about different kinds of animal shit, there are a million worse kinds than horse manure. But still not a shot that I really needed to see.
But you're right there, right in Cole's action.
Yeah. But I mean, it was a lot of it was really predictable, and I really like Idris Elba a lot. But there were a couple times in this when I was just like, "Fucking rein it in, man." And then there were some other times when I was like, "Do more, man."
There are some times where he feels withdrawn as a character, and you're like, "Is this an acting choice, or is this like a script problem?"
Yeah. But one thing I did appreciate was how they took pains to, whoever wrote this, I don't know who wrote this, took pains to
Ricky Staub co-wrote it, and it's based on the book. Sorry, just want to.
Okay. Oh, right. He's the director, right?
Yeah. And Dan Walser co-wrote it too with him.
Took pains to paint Smush as doing the drug pushing, not because he was like a guy who wanted to push drugs, but because he's like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. And this is how I'm going to do it. And I love horses, and I'm going to go like flip houses until I can like make a nice one for myself and have horses. And it was like,
that was refreshing.
I've seen that angle before, and I appreciated it. And then to know from the moment that he first steps on screen that he is going to die, and then he dies, you're like, that's kind of a fucking bummer. It would have been nice to like see the one truly original thing in this movie turn into something cool. But oh well, you can't win them all.
I don't know. I agree with you on that. And I will say Jharrel Jerome is such an outstanding actor that, even though it is predictable that he dies, I think he pulls off that role so well. I will say though, I don't think that's the only original thing in this film though. I think like Evan was saying.
Well, Black Cowboys in the City is original to us.
It's very original, right? But filmically, that's very original too. We don't see enough Black people in westerns. We don't see enough Black people with horses. It is very original. So yeah.
I think I'm not talking about the setting so much as I'm just talking about the story beats. I mean, the story beats are just, you guys have used the word predictable in it, and I was surprised by nothing in this movie, I guess is what I'm saying, which is just kind of a bummer because, the idea that, we are focusing on Black characters doing things you don't usually see Black characters doing, and that's all cool. But when even though those things are all novel, or at least in movie world, they're novel, to know what's coming every step of the way, it's kind of like, bummer. That's how I felt. It's kind of a mixed bag for me in that regard.
Sure, that makes sense.
I wanted to like it more than I did, but I didn't. So. I mean, I was never bored, but at the same time, it's kind of like, and this is the part where, Smush dies. It's just like, yeah, of course. This is the part where they're almost arrested. This is the part where Method Man, lets them get away, so.
The horse is being taken away. That was not a surprise to me.
Right. Exactly.
No.
You could see all this stuff coming.
Sure. I don't see that necessarily as a detriment, though. Would it have been great if it was more surprising? Yeah, sure. But I think it is unique enough within its premise and the actual story it's based on that I was okay with it. I was okay that it had a lot of predictability in other ways.
Okay.
But I can see why it didn't work for you in that regard. It makes sense.
Yeah. Horses.
Do we have any final thoughts that we want to share besides horses?
I have two random thoughts.
All right.
That I feel like I have to share with the world.
Lay it on us.
First, the scene where he stands on the horse in the cemetery. I said, "Oh, horseman, my horseman," because that just felt very Dead Poet Society.
Nice.
And two, I couldn't help but think of Fresh Prince when we were watching this. And so I thought to myself, in North Philadelphia, born and raised with horses, I spend most of my days.
Bravo, nice. Sir. Bravo.
Yeah. Definitely gets you the horse snap. I don't know what that would be, but there.
Yes. And those are my parting thoughts.
Yeah, I can't top that. I think we should end there. All right. Well, let's move on to our final film of the evening or the show, depending. It might not be evening when you're listening. It's evening right now. Together, a comedy drama written and directed by Nicole Beckwith, starring Ed Helms and Patty Harrison as a man and the woman who's his surrogate to give him a baby, and they form an unexpected friendship. Yay!
I'm just going to start this by saying it was really weird that the lead actor's name is Patty Harrison because that's George Harrison's first wife's name. And I was like, that's not Patty Harrison. And then I was like, oh, it's a different person because this person is 25 and that Patty Harrison's like 75. So yeah, anyway.
Okay. I'm going to start.
Flex.
That is. I'm going to start by saying I fucking loved this film. And much like Language Lessons, I could not get enough of it. I love seeing a platonic friendship between a man and a woman. And I adored this and thought it was charming and lovely. And I'll talk more later. I want to hear what you guys think, but I just had to start with that.
I loved it, but it made me very sad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Care to share more?
Yeah, actually, I think that the ending, I think that he's going to leave her and they're not going to be friends anymore because now he's got Lamp. He loves Lamp.
I know, by the way, I love that they picked Lamp for that reason. I don't think that, but that's so sad that if that is what's going to happen.
That's kind of where I am in life right now. So I just sort of feel, I say not literally, figuratively, yes. That's where I am. So I just kind of feel like, because the camera, like, even though ultimately this is her story more than it is his story. I mean, it's pretty down the middle, but the fact that the last shot of the movie is her, lying on the table, she's just given birth and he's like, peace out, gotta go love Lamp. And of course that's what you would expect him to do because his kid is down there at her feet. But it just, she's just there alone now and he loves Lamp. And, I'm sure he loves her too because he says he does, but I don't know.
By the way, I just want to interject that for listeners who have not seen this movie yet, that Lamp is what they decide to nickname the baby before it's born.
Right.
Because she doesn't want to know. Yeah, she doesn't want to know the gender because she's trying to keep as many boundaries as possible. He wants to know the gender. He wants to name the baby. And she is like, let's come up with a name. So they come up with Lamp. But anyway, just wanted to clarify.
Super gender neutral.
Yes, very. And it's actually a cute scene about talking about gender neutral names. But yes.
Yeah.
But yes, Evan, please. Share. I want to hear your thoughts. Please share.
I liked this movie and I found it funny and I found it charming. I didn't love it though. For me, it felt very long. Like I felt like this was a long hour and a half. I think it was largely to do with what I felt like was some excess fat in terms of like the scenes with her and her coworker at the cafe. I could have entirely cut those out of the movie. I didn't find them funny. I didn't feel like they added to her character. I would have much rather spent time with her in a different scenario or time with him or them. I would have liked anything more than those scenes. I didn't feel like they added very much for me in terms of humor or story. I would have rather have spent more time in a different setting getting to know their characters, even if it's just more time spent with the two of them. I understand you can't do that entirely in a movie. Like you need to have breaks, but that part I feel like is the least effective piece. I loved when they were together. I think they had a great dynamic, great chemistry. Didn't love him in the beginning. I feel like he's kind of, they kind of start out the movie with him being kind of like an invasive, shitty, clueless guy, like trying to control what she's eating and what she's doing. Cause like, oh, this is going to be his baby. And I'm glad that they kind of like pivot from that. And he becomes like more sensitive and caring and more of like a friend character and less of a like taskmaster.
Yeah, I think if that were the dynamic the movie was going for, that'd be a long 90 minutes for all of us.
Oh yeah. I would have hated the movie then.
Yeah. I kind of, this is one of those movies though. I really liked this a lot. I did. And I liked Ed Helms a lot. I like Ed Helms.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
But this is one of those things where like, this is the Ed Helmsiest of Ed Helms roles. You know what I mean? This is just like a role that if you cast Ed Helms, you think, well, of course. If you cast Brad Pitt, you're like, why the fuck are you casting Brad Pitt? Cast Ed Helms. But more than anything, I loved her. I loved Anna.
She's amazing.
I loved Patty Harrison's interpretation of that character, and I thought her character was great. And she has the most expressive, inexpressive face, if that makes sense. Like her face doesn't change very much, but like she moves like a muscle, and it's like whatever she's thinking change. Like you know immediately that she's thinking something completely different from the moment before. Do you know what I mean? What I'm saying? That
yes,
it's subtle. Yeah. Is subtle the right word? I don't know.
Yeah,
but
I think subtle. She has subtle changes in her facial expression where you can actually read a lot into them.
Tig Notaro as their therapist.
Yeah, Tig Notaro's great.
Tig Notaro was fucking great in there, and how she was like the classic, like, well, what do you think it means, therapist? That just really cracked me up. I don't know why, but it did. So.
I want to get back to Patty Harrison's personality, her character Anna. One of the big reasons I loved this movie was within the first 5 minutes, I knew everything I needed to know about both of their personalities. I was like, okay, Matt, Ed Helms' character, okay, he's kind of controlling. He's a worrywart. You know, this is something he clearly feels passionately about having a baby, you know, and Anna is so kind of, you know, self-deprecating and funny, but like has all these observations and she's not afraid to say them, but yet also is kind of like, don't put that down in your notes. Like, no, don't say that. And I loved it. I just thought it was great. And I agree with both of you that they have really great banter and really great chemistry together. Yeah, I loved it. I think this movie is so funny too. This movie made me laugh out loud multiple times. For instance, the ultrasound scoot scene, which has the ultrasound technician who is the executive assistant on Veep, and she's amazing on that, is hilarious and so true for any person who has had to have any kind of gynecological exam of any kind. It is so true. You constantly have to scoot and it's so fucking annoying and ridiculous. And I love when she makes him, you know, show her how you would instruct someone to put in a tampon. because, if he has a baby or a kid that needs a tampon. I love that. I just think it's
great scene.
It is great.
Yeah.
I love it. I love when they're picking out the baby's room paint color together and he's going through like what all these colors mean and they're all like contradictory meanings. And she's like, where are you getting this? And she like shoves the book down and they're pulling off paint samples one by one. I loved it. I thought it was so great. I love that they bond over watching Friends. And she's like, this show's stupid. But then by the end, she's crying too.
Yeah. I also like how they, how her uncomfortability with the fact that she was becoming such good friends with him, like really creeped her out in a way,
Yes.
That she just, because she makes reference quite explicitly to the fact that she doesn't speak to her family anymore because they were terrible to her. And you kind of get the feeling that she doesn't want to be close to anybody. And despite her best efforts to keep him at arm's length, she just, as she says, I love you, not in a gross way.
But he weaseled in. He like snuck in and they each, and they're each very solitary people in their own way. Like we definitely see Matt, with his parents and with his step parents and his friends. But at the same time, he's doing this on his own. And he talks about how he doesn't fit into any world. He doesn't fit in with his single friends because he doesn't want to be single, but he doesn't fit in with his, married friends with kids because he doesn't have that either. And so he's solitary in his way and she's very solitary, keeping everyone at a distance. And I love that they form this connection and then this bond. And when she kind of pushes him away because, she thinks they've breached too many boundaries or she's uncomfortable with their friendship, it so reminded me of Language Lessons and how Natalie Morales pushes, Mark Duplass away. It's like the same thing. I mean, not the same circumstances, obviously. But it just reminded me so much of that and how it's scary to be vulnerable. It's scary to have someone, that you're that close with and you need or look forward to that much. But I just think it's a really beautiful and tender friendship. And it just made me happy. And I just loved being around them and seeing them. And I hope that he doesn't ditch her.
Yeah, I feel like the way the movie ends, though, for me, kind of implied that this was the end of their relationship because, like, we've seen what their story was, and now, like, they're going off in their own direction. She's going to be going to school. He's going to be taking care of the kid. Like, I hope that's not what it is, but I feel like the way that they ended it. And that's the thing that I liked about this movie is I feel like it made some bold choices in terms of like characters and relationships and like having a lead, male character who is doing this on his own. He is very excited about having a kid and he doesn't want to wait around anymore. He wants to have a kid. And so he's going to make it happen. And that's not a character that you really see in film. And you don't see a lot of platonic love stories in film. Like, so I feel like this movie makes some like really bold choices, which I dig. I like that it kind of goes for broke in a number of ways. And I respect that about it, even if I don't think all of them necessarily work. Like I was saying before about it feeling kind of long and not liking certain sections of the movie. But I dig what it's going for.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. I love that it deals with single parenthood and pro-choice issues. They have a whole conversation about, her being pro-choice because she had a child before that she gave up for adoption. They talk about adoption. There's a queer couple during the surrogacy meeting that like kind of group session that Matt goes to. It explores connection. And it's funny. The thing, Evan, that you talked about that I like so much is about, platonic love stories and we don't see them enough. And I love that. And I actually really liked her coworker and I really liked those scenes. And I like when he says to her, just because you're not together, which obviously is invoking the title of the film, doesn't mean you didn't form a connection. But my favorite thing he says is after that, and he's like, also, I'm really worried you're making a straight white guy in there.
That was funny.
Loved.
And she says like, oh, I'm going to have him start a podcast.
Yes. Yes. Although she is a woman of color, so it would not be a white guy, but still hilarious nonetheless.
It might be though, because it was a donor egg. It's not her egg.
Oh, you're right. Shit, you're totally right. You're right. I take it all back.
Hey, I just remembered a key point that you didn't remember. That's never happened before.
That never happens.
Mark this down.
It's a momentous occasion.
Episode 354. Dave remembered something Megan didn't. Never again.
Now you've jinxed me. It'll probably happen nonstop from this point on. Yeah. It's all downhill from here.
This is the effect I have on people. I apologize.
Yeah. But anyway, but back to the point that you guys are making about that they don't stay friends. I guess it would make sense, hearkening back to that quote about, how because he talks about, her coworker talks about how all relationships end, nothing lasts forever, everything's, transient. And that's true, but I took it to mean a little bit different. I took it to mean just that they're transient in the sense that she's not going to physically be there. She won't be living in his house anymore because she'll be off at college in Vermont. But that doesn't necessarily mean their bond is broken. But who knows? And I think to speak to your point, Evan, about the bold choices, I think the fact that it is such an ambiguous ending, the fact that we're still, we keep going back and forth and we're still talking about it, I think that's really great that it's not a concrete, definitive ending. It's not a definitive answer because it's kind of like life. Mm-hmm. Life is not definitive. Who knows? You make plans to stay in touch with people. You make plans, but that doesn't mean those plans are going to come to fruition. That doesn't mean that people don't grow apart. So hopefully they don't, but maybe they will. And then I'll cry. After we stop recording, I'll cry.
Yeah, to that point, I mean, you could make the argument that they have such a unusual and intimate bond, and they did fall in platonic love, that they will always have that. But I think their relationship will change on a fundamental level simply because, if nothing else, the distance between them. She said that the program that she's in is a bachelor's master's program where you get to school for 3.5 years with no breaks. So that means 4 years of summer school, because it would be, if you start in the fall, then there would be 4 summer schools. Oh my God, that sounds like torture. But she's going to be in fucking Vermont for 3.5 years doing that.
That's true.
She'll have December 19th to January 23rd each year free. But
can I just say, I love that we're getting in deep to the nitty gritty about her collegiate schedule and plans.
I was just thinking that, like, where else do you get that? What other shows go to this level of analysis?
Yeah.
But I think that also speaks to how sharp the writing is in this film, that these feel like two real people. This feels like actual people that you're seeing on screen, not some fictitious narrative. So, and also our amazing analysis.
Yeah. I just wanted to point out the scene where Ed Helms is like eating the candy bar after their therapy session.
I love that.
And he says, "Do you want some candy?" And she's like, "No." And she's like, "Why do you have candy?" He's like, "Well, because my, ex and I came here to couples counseling for however long they went, 6 months or whatever. And afterwards, we'd have a good session. Then afterwards we would come out here and eat candy and then go home and continue not having sex." And I was just like, oh my God, that's the saddest thing I've ever heard.
Right?
Yeah. My God. Eat candy, hold hands, and then go home and not sleep together. And then I love when that comes back around later in the movie. And she's like, "Hey, want to eat candy, hold hands, and then not have sex?"
Yeah.
He's like, "Boy, do I ever."
Yeah. And he whips out his candy bar.
Is whatchamacallit, which he does. He eats whatchamacallits.
Yeah. And she's got Swedish fish.
Yeah. Which he eats. Yeah. Then he eats and she eats the candy bar. Anyway, so cute.
Yeah.
And the normalization of, I think, therapy is great in group sessions and all of that. Anyway, I could just go on. Keep gushing about this. I loved this. I loved the way it was written, acted, everything. I loved the delicate piano score that accompanied the film. I adored this.
This is just so, this is going to sound like such a guy thing to say, probably, but I really appreciate the fact that this is written and directed by a woman, because like, what fucking guy would make this movie? And then we all got to see this movie and we all really liked it. And some of us loved it. And even though it made me very sad. And then just thinking, like, not that all women are necessarily sensitive, but you're just getting just a much more nuanced piece of work than I think most men would write if they chose to write this story. Anyway.
I would definitely agree that it's nuanced in the sense of my favorite scenes, like the tampon scene and the scooting, exam scene, because anyone who has a period, anyone who has, vaginal issues, people of, who go to those appointments, you understand, so whether or not that's a man, not, maybe not, but I love those little insights and nuances. And so I agree in that way. And I love supporting women filmmakers. So I think that's great.
Okay, I said the right thing. Yay.
Well, I don't know if I agree that a man couldn't be sensitive, but
no, that's not what I meant.
Oh.
I didn't mean that a man can't be sensitive. I meant that I think you need. I don't think a man could write this particular story specifically with the examples you just mentioned, like the table and the how you do it, the tampon and all that. Like you would have to like say, hey, Susan, or whoever your best friend is, what's this like? And then you'd have to have that awkward conversation that you just asked your friend, what's this like? So
yeah, what you're saying, and I think at least what I'm interpreting is I think that most male writers, directors would probably focus on like the comedy of that and like the awkwardness of the comedy and like the like having uncomfortable conversations, like haha, look at this guy is gonna have an uncomfortable conversation about periods, haha.
Yes.
And like there are moments that are like funny, awkward conversations, but it's like we're gonna set aside the awkwardness of it and actually like revel in it because it's like a productive, good thing that's happening here.
Yeah. Well, think about it this way. If this movie were written and directed by a man, it would be knocked up, right? So, I mean, not really.
Not quite,
not
but
exactly
sort of.
the same.
Yeah, but sort of.
But you kind of get what I'm saying? It'd be...
Yeah. Definitely.
I feel like it would have that sort of approach.
Yeah, definitely if it was written by a cis man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a trans man would have a very different, perspective,
Sure,
obviously.
yeah.
So,
and
yeah.
You raise a good point. I was speaking specifically about guys like Judd Apatow.
Yes, gross. But yeah, no, I know what you guys mean. I'm pushing back a bit because it's kind of gender binary and kind of gender stereotypy. But yeah, no, I totally get what you guys are saying, and I don't disagree. And that's what I'm saying. Like, and even things like about people who are pregnant or who can get pregnant. Talking about the notion of just because somebody gives up a child for adoption doesn't make them anti-choice, and like that's a really, really important piece that we haven't even talked about, because so often on screen, it's one or the other. You either get someone who's having an abortion, which, yay, we don't have enough abortion depictions on screen, so that's always great. Or do you have someone who gets, who doesn't even acknowledge that abortion is an option and is like, I'm going to, either keep the baby or give it up for adoption. And it's this very kind of anti-choice bent to it and lens. Even whether or not somebody means it to be that way, it does come off that way. So I love the fact that they flat out, that Nicole Beckwith flat out addresses that in the film and they have a conversation about it. And I think it's a really important conversation to have, and one that is very nuanced and very much speaks to what you guys are saying.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, do we have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I mean, I think I said everything. I've been as nakedly emotional as I want to be.
I want more naked emotion. Evan, what about you?
I think we've covered everything.
All right. Well, let's do a quick recap then. So, Wicked Queer, Boston's LGBTQ plus film festival. You can check out their short films right now through the end of the month, through April 30th. And I think Evan and I would recommend each of the films: Kiss Me Kosher, Nina Wu, Bloodthirsty, See You When. So keep your eyes out for those. I hope they'll be coming soon. Actually, I think Bloodthirsty is coming soon. I think it's coming in the next week or two. Very soon. Okay, The Banishing, which you can see on Shudder.
No.
So I'm going to kind of be like, I'm not going to not recommend it, but I'm also not going to give it a hard recommend, because I think there are still some really interesting things happening on screen and visually. But yeah, if you don't see it, it's not the end of the world either. So Concrete Cowboy, streaming on Netflix right now.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
why not?
I definitely recommend it.
I would also recommend it. And Together, which is going to be out in theaters today. It will be on VOD as of May 11th.
11th, yep.
So I would give it a very enthusiastic recommendation. What about you guys?
I would too, yeah.
Yeah, definitely worth seeing.
Great. I love it when we agree. I love it when we don't agree. I just love everything. So we want to give a huge, huge thank you to our amazing editor, Otto Clammer. Thank you, Otto, for everything you do. Thank you for making us sound great week after week.
Thank you, Otto.
You can find Spoiler Piece Theater anywhere you get podcasts. We're at spoilerpiece.com. You can find us on social media. We are Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook. We're at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and TikTok. Find us and follow us at all of the social media places. You can email us if you want to tell us, no, we're wrong about The Banishing, or yes, I loved Together too. You can, or if you have a question for us, you can email us at spoilerpiece@gmail.com, or you can call us at
862-21-PIECE. I almost got the number wrong. That's weird.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
It's because you got that other point right earlier.
I know. And now karma's biting me in the ass. Like, you only get to make one good point per show, Dave. Now everything else you're going to fuck up. So.
But yes, give us a call, leave us an email, tell us what you think. Let us know what you think about the show and the movies that we talk about. And if you like the show, please rate and review us. Go to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. That really helps us out. You can also go to Apple Podcasts and rate us there. That helps us out even more. It lets people know about the show and get the word out. And if you really, really like the show, why not join our Patreon if you can? This week, we talked about the 1973 horror film Messiah of Evil, which was a patron request. And we put out weekly bonus episodes. I was going to say every week. We put out bonus episodes every week. And for $1 a month, you get a shout out on the show. For $5 a month, you get to listen to those weekly bonus episodes as well as vote in monthly polls. We have a poll right now on hair movies. So be sure to vote in that if you have not yet, if you're a patron. And if you're not a patron, consider joining. And for $10 a month, our patrons, you get to tell us what to watch each month. Like this patron who told us to watch Messiah of Evil. And we also want to take this moment to thank our amazing patrons.
Yeah, we do. I want to say a huge thank you to Bill Scahan, to Sean Pensionar, to Christopher Jensen, Bob Chipman, Charlie Nash, Davida Margolin, Zach Pigeon, Chris Wilkinson, Max Scoville, Shona Glasgow, Rory Glenn, Shelley McCaskill, Mike, Lord of the Sith, Deirdre Crimmins, and Shauna Harris.
Thank you, patrons.
Thanks, patrons.
And thank you so much, listeners. You all are the best. And thank you so much for listening to the show. My name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network. I'm also a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. You can follow me on Twitter at OpinionSWorld and on Instagram and Letterboxd at TheOpinionS.
My name is Dave Riedel. I write about movies for some places. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and you can follow me on all the socials as Dave Sees Movies. That's Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd.
And my name is Evan Crean. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. You can follow me on Twitter and on Letterboxd as Real Recon, and that's real as in film reel.
Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.